Hey everyone, and welcome back to Study Bites. Thank you all so much for supporting our first 5 episodes. Hopefully you guys are super excited for our next 5 as well. I had to take a bit of a break over the university exam period, and that kind of stretched out a few months. And basically I just kind of discovered that filming YouTube videos at 2 AM and sleeping for like 3 hours a night just wasn't a very sustainable way to live. So I kind of crashed a bit with my health, but I am back and awake to produce some more content for you guys, so hopefully you guys are super pumped for that. We are going to mix things up for the next 5 episodes. Rather than teaching you a different concept each video, I'm going to teach the same concept to you but in a different style each time. So you're still getting that study technique, but I'm going to be teaching you the same thing. So why I guess I'm kind of doing that is because I really want to drive that point home that, you know, no matter what you're learning, you can do that learning in a variety of different ways. And there are so many different ways you can study things that are kind of fun and creative, and so that's what I'm trying to get across to you guys. So without any further ado, let's jump into episode number 6, and that is whiteboards. So step 1 here, guys, is to, of course, find yourself a whiteboard. Now, I love my whiteboard. It is possibly one of my most prized possessions. And the reason I love it so much is that it actually forces me to move around as I'm learning. So I'm a little bit on the ADHD spectrum of things. Don't know if you guys picked that up, but I really need to move as I'm learning or as I'm talking, because that really helps me to actually learn something. So it's not just the visualizing for me, it's actually the movement as well. So if you don't have access to a whiteboard like mine, you have a few options. You can always use the one at school. Often they have, you know, big ones on the wall. They're really good. You can also even use the windows in your house if your parents let you. So just drawing with a whiteboard marker on large windows, or as sort of a last resort, you can always just have a smaller whiteboard and hang it up on a wall, and then you can kind of move around at least while you're drawing. So you've got your whiteboard, or you've got your windows as it may be, then you're ready for step 2, and here you have 2 different options. So the way I like to work on a whiteboard is I either do a flow diagram, which is straight up and down, or I do a mind map, which is a bit more branched. And so I'm going to do both of those things for you today, with our main concept, which we're going to be learning for the next 5 episodes, which is the arrangement of the different nervous systems in the body. Now, before you jump away, I know that most of you already probably know what a mind map or a flow diagram is, but the way that I do things is quite different. Most people, when they draw a mind map, they use a lot of words, and as we all know, words don't really work for us, so why use them? I want you, when you're drawing out these diagrams, to try and use as little words as possible and as many colours and pictures and symbols as you possibly can, because that's what's going to stick in our heads and that's what's going to help us to remember. So in step 4, you're going to start drawing out your mind map or your flow diagram and start making those picture word links. So think about the word that you're trying to put on the board, break it down and see what sort of images or things you can make out of that word. So I'm going to describe to you guys all of the picture word links that I have made for the human nervous system and show you guys essentially my mind map that I've created. Okay, so all mind maps start with a key concept in the middle, and that is our human nervous system. So I have a very nervous looking human in the center there, and a little bubble that I've made around it made out of a nerve or a neuron, just to remind me of those biological processes. Going over to our central nervous system, I've given it all the one colour, and I've made a little information eye symbol for central, which is often like the little ones you find in shopping centres, and that's sort of exactly what the central nervous system does. It sort of coordinates all the information, it takes in information and releases information, and it's made up of that brain and the spinal cord. And I've given that spinal cord a little electrical plug on the end, just to remind me that it's a spinal cord and not the spinal column. So on the other side over here, I was struggling to remember the word peripheral, which is quite a tricky word. So I broke it down into the words peri and feral, and I drew a peri-peri chili, like from Nando's, and a feral cat who has gotten quite smelly. Now, this did 2 things. It helped me to remember the word peripheral, like peri-feral, but it also helped me to remember what the peripheral system did, because, you know, the peri-peri chili was very spicy, which is sort of taste, and the feral cat was very smelly, which is smell. So it helps me to remember that it has something to do with the senses. Just below that, I have the autonomic nervous system, and I kept calling it the automatic nervous system, which is a really easy mistake to make. So I drew a little man on a beanbag or a couch watching TV, which is, you know, a pretty automatic process, but he's also holding a bowl of chips and going nom 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 because they're very yummy, and so that helped me to remember that it was the autonomic nervous system. So over on the other side, I have the somatic nervous system, and again, this was a word I was struggling to remember. So I broke it down into sum and attic, and so I drew a little attic in a house with lots of stairs in it, and it has a little man going up the stairs and he's saying phew because he's been using all of his, you know, voluntary skeletal muscles to get him up the stairs. So that was the somatic nervous system. So branching off that autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system. And so here I have just drawn a parallel line to remind me of that para part of the word. And then I've also drawn a squiggle over the top of it because that's sort of what the parasympathetic nervous system does. It sort of brings that body back to that nice homeostatic level. So last but not least, we have the sympathetic nervous system, and here I've just drawn a girl who is feeling very sympathetic towards her friend because she has seen a bear recently, and that has scared her. So that bear image sort of reminds me of the fight, flight, freeze response that aids our survival, and the sympathetic girl obviously reminds me that it's the sympathetic nervous system. Now I've also got a few arrows drawn in here, and that's why I really love mind maps. I've sort of linked what systems sort of talk to each other and in which directions. So that might be a really helpful step for you to do as well. So step 5, the final step, is to rub it all off and see how much you can remember. So try and replicate it. So hopefully using that combination of pictures and colours and symbols and the movement will actually help you to remember those key concepts. So moving on to our flow diagram here, I've done the exact same pictures. All I've done is I put it into a more linear format or layout. So this is totally up to you. It's whatever you prefer. Personally, I like a mind map because my brain sort of works more in clouds than it sort of does in straight up and down. And I find that, you know, having things in different areas of the whiteboard also helps me remember. But you might be one of those people who like a process, like a step by step, and that's totally up to you and totally fine as well. So it's about finding what works for you, but this is just, you know, another representation of basically what I drew in a mind map, just in a flowchart format. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all of that sort of stuff, and we'll see you guys in the next study bite.